Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Josie's Point of View, where we focus on human interest stories from the Carolinas and beyond. Today it's Saturday and it's July the 19th, 2025. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're new to my channel, I want to thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you find the information here to be informative. And if you're a return viewer, by all means, thank you for coming back. You know, I always say the tide changes so frequently here on these YouTube streets, so you always have to acknowledge where your support comes from. And I want you to know I sincerely thank you for your support. So feel free to like and to share this video, and don't forget to subscribe. And our story today comes from Fort Bragg here in North Carolina. Take a look at the headline. And it reads, Fort Bragg soldier gets 25 years for murder. Another is acquitted of murder charges. I'll provide you with a summary here, and as always, I'll identify some of my sources for you in the description box. Well, today's video is essentially an update from a video completed back in 2023. It's about two Fort Bragg paratroopers charged with murdering two very young children in their care. One incident took place at the base at Fort Bragg, the second in the Fayetteville community. Back then, my belief was that both soldiers were not being treated the same because one was denied bond while the other was free to go about his daily activities. Now, both of these men have had their day in court, and today's video presents the findings. Now, a few months ago, one of the accused left me a message regarding the outcome of his case, but I waited until I had information to share on both cases. So let's go ahead and let's get started. Now, the incident took place in February of 2023, but an arrest was not made till many months later. But when the arrest was made, the news headline read as follows: Fort Liberty soldier charged in death of his 8-month-old daughter. And the paratrooper associated with this case was Sergeant Gabriel Seville, assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division here at Fort Bragg. And the baby in question was an 8-month-old. His daughter, her name was Misty. She became known as Baby Misty, and she died just a few days after custody was transferred from her mother to him. Apparently, Sergeant Seville and the child's mother were no longer an item, and she had relocated to California after their breakup. And at some point, the court had ordered what can be described as a joint custody arrangement, and the mother had complied with the court's directive and released the child into the father's custody. But at some point during the first evening of that custody transfer, reports say Sergeant Seville contacted the baby's mother to say that Misty was crying and he could not get her to stop. He also said that he had a very bad headache. And shortly after that, another call to the mother stated the child was unresponsive, and she directed the father to call the ambulance. The next thing the mother knew was that her baby daughter was being airlifted to UNC in Chapel Hill, where she later passed away. Now, a lot took place between the time the baby was injured and until the baby's death. We can't go into all of it, but there were accusations of assault. Allegedly, the father was beaten up and some other things took place. But the question on everybody's mind was exactly how did baby Misty die? Now, the coroner's report stated that the child died from blunt force trauma to the head and neck and ruled the death a homicide. According to the autopsy report, the baby suffered multiple impacts on both sides of the head, as well as unexplained bruising on her face. Now, the dad consistently denied any abuse of his daughter, but he did admit that he had slapped her on the back a few times to clear her throat after she had vomited earlier in the evening that when she was injured. And the next incident took place just a few weeks after the baby Misty incident, but in a different location. The time now was March of 2023, and the location was a private home in the city of Fayetteville, just a few miles outside of Fort Bragg. And at that time, the news headline read as follows: Fort Bragg soldier charged with first-degree murder in toddler's beating death. And this time, the baby was a 20-month-old baby boy. His name was Mason. And the soldier in question was pictured here, 26-year-old paratrooper Joseph Nathaniel King. and he was the boyfriend of the baby's mother. And the baby was discovered dead in his bed, and that discovery was made by a family member who just happened to stop by the home for a visit. So Sergeant King was the child's babysitter, and he was alone at home with the child when he was found deceased. The child mother told investigator that the baby was not injured when she left him with King earlier that morning, but when the family member stepped by for a visit, Mason was covered to have been injured and he was already deceased in his bed. Investigators say the infant had several bruises on his forearm, his arms, his legs, his back, his torso, and scratches on the child's face. They say he suffered bleeding along his spinal column with fractured bones in his upper right forearm, as well as bleeding on his brain. The autopsy revealed the child most likely died from blunt force trauma to the head and neck, and his death was ruled a homicide. And the day following the baby's death, baby Mason's, Joseph King was arrested and charged with murder. He was booked into the Cumberland County Detention Center where bond was denied and his trial was set for June of 2025. And so that's the background information on both paratroopers facing murder charges for incidents that took place just several weeks apart, one on a military installation and the other in Cumberland County, which is in Fayetteville. And that brings us to the final chapter and the final disposition for both men. And Sergeant Seville was the first to face a military court martial on Fort Bragg, where he pled not guilty to unpremeditated murder, involuntary manslaughter, and domestic violence in the death of his 8-month-old baby daughter, Misty. He did take the stand and testified that he would never hurt his daughter and was not responsible for her injuries. The defense suggested that interventions to save Misty's life could have contributed to some of her injuries, and they also brought to light that she had tested positive for COVID-19, suggesting that she was already ill when transferred to the care of her dad. And at the end of that trial, Sergeant Seville was found not guilty of murder, leaving the child's mother in a state of shock. And she told the media she was just devastated by the verdict. But anyway, he was found not guilty, and it was recommended that he received the restoration of all his pretrial rights and privileges. And when reached by phone, Seville told the media that the verdict speaks for itself and refused to comment any further. And by the way, I did receive a comment under my previous video telling me about the outcome of the trial. I heard you, I responded back, but I just waited on a video until I had the results of both trials. And now let's return to Fayetteville, where the second paratrooper, Joseph King, was preparing to go on trial for the death or the murder of the 21-year-old baby Mason, his girlfriend's son. He had been charged with first-degree premeditated murder. And as I already mentioned, his trial date was scheduled for June, this past June. And prior to the start date of that trial, on the advice of his attorney, he negotiated a plea with prosecutors. And so on June the 11th, he pled guilty to second-degree murder and felony child abuse. And as a result of that guilty plea, the now ex-Fort Bragg paratrooper was sentenced to 25 years in prison. 25 years in prison for the murder of young baby Mason. It's just an emotional ending. I really don't know what else to say. And so there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Two similar murder cases, two paratroopers involved, two different sentencing results. One paratrooper who was tried in the military court is acquitted and is allowed to resume his activities, and the second paratrooper in the civilian court he pled guilty and will be going away, spending 2.5 decades behind bars. Now, through it all, let us not remember that two babies were lost, their lives were lost. And while we celebrate the success of one paratrooper being set free and being allowed to pick up where he left off, we can't help but mourn the second one who will be spending 2.5 decades behind bars. It makes you wonder, why was he even Was he even qualified to be a babysitter? This is a question that I had, not minimizing the crime, but was he even qualified to be babysitting a child? Ladies and gentlemen, this a lesson from here. Just because he is a male doesn't mean that he has the subset of skills that's required to take care of our children. But nonetheless, two tragic cases, and through it all, let us remember that two lives were lost, two babies whose lives ended prematurely. And that's all I have for you right now. Feel free to leave me a comment below and let me know what you think about this video. And by all means, feel free to like it and to share it. And if you haven't done so already, I want to invite you to subscribe to my channel by clicking on that red subscribe button. It's on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And if you click on the bell that looks just like this one, that's the notification bell. If you click on that notification bell, you'll be the first to know whenever a new video is uploaded. I thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.